5. Grand Canyon pulled the upset over St. Mary's, their first ever win in the NCAA tournament. Blake, how do you see this one shaking out here? Can the Lopes knock off the Terrapins? This is a tough Maryland team.
Yeah, I got a first-hand look this past weekend at Grand Canyon in the WAC tournament in Las Vegas, and from what Coach Bryce Drew was saying, this team is playing its best basketball of the year right now this past week. They've got some loads of tournament experience, which helps them going into this matchup with Jacoby Coles, transferred from TCU this year, 4 years in the NCAA tournament for him, not to mention Tyon Grant Foster, who is a key leader for that team last season. You see 14.5 points per game. He just recently came back to the team this past week, so having him back is huge to pair with the Lopes experience that they have coming into this year. Made it to the round of 32 for the first time in program history last year. Plus, Bryce Drew has some history actually with Maryland. Take it back 10 years ago when he was coaching his alma mater, Valparaiso. 13-4 matchup once again. His team ended up coming up short to Maryland that time, but I think the Lopes have a good chance of an upset here. Maryland is a very good team, though. They do have a potential lottery pick in Derek Queen, averaging over 16 points per game, could go top 10 in the NBA in this upcoming draft. But I just sense the connectivity of the Lopes, the experience that they have. It's the most experience Bryce Drew has had for a team heading into the NCAA tournament in his 5 years at GCU. Give me the Lopes in round 1 in Seattle.
All right, well, here we go. Let's just do this right here. Well, boom. How you like that? Oh, I blocked it. All right, let's go up here. Blake, I'm going to tap on Arizona for me. We've got Arizona and Akron in the opening round up there in the East. Arizona's been kind of a mixed bag this year. Caleb Love is kind of their stalwart. They kind of go as he goes. You know, locally, we've seen them a couple times, obviously, match up with Arizona State. Arizona State was down this year, so Arizona got the better of those matchups. What do you make of this Arizona team? You look at them, their matchup with Akron in this opening round, you figure, okay, they should probably get past Akron, although this is a team that's been knocked off by Princeton in years past. They haven't had a great NCAA tournament success record under Tommy Lloyd. Does that change this year?
This is the thing. You mentioned that loss to Princeton. It's almost been like an every other year trend for Arizona. Back in 2022, made it to the Sweet 16. 2023, as you mentioned, lose in the first round as a 2 seed to Princeton. Then last season, made it to the Sweet 16 again. It almost seems like they're due.
Oh, so you're saying it's upset central this year.
They're due to be upset. This thing with this Arizona team, though, is that they're so inconsistent. They can be competing amongst the best of the best, but they can also be not having it any time of the night. I mean, there's situations where Caleb Love will light it up for 40-plus, and another time he won't hit a 3 all game, and then all of a sudden he hits a buzzer beater to force overtime against Texas Tech. So I don't really know how to evaluate this team. I think, though, just given the circumstances, Akron is back-to-back in the MAC. But I don't.
And we love Maction.
We do love Maction, but I do think that it's going to be a old Pac-12 rivalry in the round of 32.
Oh, move them in.
Give me Oregon and Arizona moving on, and then I think Arizona's. It's like, almost like a middle ground. Like they've made it to the Sweet 16. They got upset, but I think it's like that middle ground. They get to the round of 32, but this Oregon squad has 16 quad 1 wins. And I think Arizona gets knocked out at the round of 32. So
I wish we had a fun, like when a team moved on, we should have like a cheering sound. Like, yay! That team.
But I think Arizona gets to the round of 32, makes it past the round of 64 this time, but their run comes up short.
Let's talk, when people are filling out their brackets, there's so many different ways to do it. Some people do a lot of research. Some people just pick by colors and mascots, and those are the people that ultimately end up winning the bracket pools most of the time. When you're looking at the 1 seeds and you're evaluating the top seeds, maybe let's start up here in the South. Auburn is such an interesting team if you're looking at filling out your brackets because they've lost 3 of their last 4 games entering this tournament. They got Johnny Broome. Arguably, he's going to be up for the Player of the Year award, arguably the best player in college basketball. Do you trust Auburn? This is not an easy part of the bracket they have, especially assuming they advance, they don't get the 16-1 upset. Having to face either Louisville or Creighton in the second round. Ultimately, if they get past that, maybe you're looking at Michigan. Do you trust Auburn? Do we trust Auburn making a Final Four run? I don't know if I trust them making it all the way to the Final Four. Definitely, they should get out of their first round matchup, of course. We'll just do this, then.
But for the matchup below them, Louisville and Creighton, that's going to be a very interesting one. Creighton playing St. John's in the Big East Championship game. They've got a bunch of big wins on their resume outside of St. John's, beating Marquette, UConn, and Xavier. Meanwhile, Louisville, what a turnaround season for the Cardinals, going from 8-24 to 27-7 this season. I think this remarkable turnaround run continues into a Cinderella for the Cardinals in there, and then I think Auburn, Louisville, it's going to be a good matchup, but I still got the Tigers going a little bit farther than that. Now we go down here to Michigan and UC San Diego. Michigan, Big Ten tournament champs, very difficult conference in basketball, in college basketball, but UC San Diego, hold on a second. 15 straight wins. It's the longest. It's the longest win streak in college basketball. 30-4, the Big West champs. 15 straight wins. They've got some elite scoring. I'm taking UCSD for the upset over the Wolverines.
$5 if you pronounce this correctly.
I don't even want to try.
How do I get him to go? There we go. Oh, nope. Too many clicks.
And then just head back to the south.
I'm sorry, we were pulling the upset?
We got the upset for UCSD. For Texas A&M and Yale, I'm going to also take Yale for the upset. They upset Auburn last year in the tournament, and they could potentially find their way there. Give me Yale moving on to face Auburn in a rematch of last year. Auburn gets their revenge against the Bulldogs, and they find their way to the Elite Eight. On the bottom side of this South region, Ole Miss versus North Carolina. North Carolina winning their first four matchup last night. UNC, honestly, a disgrace that they even got into the tournament.
A lot of mixed feelings about this.
They're 1-12 in quad one games. I think they just basically got put in there based on historical precedent, but they're going to get humbled in the first round. Ole Miss is going to move on. The SEC has been so good this season. And then you're looking at Iowa State. This was a top 3 team in the nation one time this year when they played ASU here in town. The football team was in town. Not enough to rally. Rematch of the Big 12 championship.
That game was exciting for ASU fans. Then the last 15.
But the Cyclones ended up running away with it. I got them moving on, taking on Ole Miss. This is going to be a very exciting matchup. We'll get to that in just a second. Marquette, New Mexico. The young Pitino, Richard Pitino leading this Lobo squad. But Marquette, however, Marquette had an up and down season, but they're winners of their last 3 games. Still, I got the young Pitino moving on in this bracket. Michigan State, the resume speaks for itself. Tom Izzo, the winningest coach in Big Ten history now, just passing the great Bob Knight for most conference wins all time in Big Ten history. Iowa State, Ole Miss. Give me Iowa State to move on. The Cyclones continue the Big 12 resume. Michigan State, they are superb in these tournament situations. They're going to knock out the young Pitino. He's still got to build up to his dad's resume so far. Okay.
And we'll talk about the other Pitino here.
Now to get to the Elite Eight and to the regional final. Give me Michigan State continuing on.
Michigan State.
And then of the 1-2 matchup, although Auburn has been the majority #1 team all of this year, this seems like a Tom Izzo team trying to get back to the Final Four for the first time since 2019.
I like Michigan State.
It just seems like a special year for him with being able to pass the most wins all time in Big 12 in Big 10 conference history. I got the Spartans in the Final Four once again. Well, if we want to go back over to the East, here to Arizona, got Oregon already in the Sweet 16. Talk about 1 seeds, potential vulnerable ones. Duke, I don't think is going to get knocked out in the first round. They've still got the best player in college basketball, arguably.
Cooper Flagg, we assume he's going to be healthy. Missed a couple games in the tournament, the ACC tournament with the ankle injury. That, assuming they get past a couple rounds, more time to rest. He may play the first round. We don't know yet. But that is one thing to keep an eye on.
It could make them vulnerable for sure. Baylor, Mississippi State, Bryce Drew's brother, Scott Drew, leading this Baylor program. They won a national championship a few years ago in 2021. Give me the Bears moving on. BYU, VCU, this BYU team is ferocious. They get after it on the basketball court.
Former Suns coach Kevin Young leading them.
Kevin Young leading the squad. I think they could make a dangerous run here in the dance. Wisconsin, Montana, the Badgers are a buzzsaw this season. They are just both sides of the basketball. They have tons of size, tons of physicality. This is a team that also made it to the national championship and won about a decade ago against Duke. Give me them moving on as well. St. Mary's, Vanderbilt. St. Mary's is a team that has consistently competed in the WCC. Give me the Gales. Once again, in the round of 32, Alabama, a team that could compete for a national championship, was in the Final Four here in Phoenix just last season.
Oh, yeah.
Give them another shot at it. Tide moving on back up to the top of the bracket. Okay, Duke and Baylor, two historically successful programs. I still think Duke gets the edge and moves along.
Okay, I could see if we get whoever is, if it's Mississippi State or Baylor, I could see that being the tricky spot for Duke if Cooper Flagg is not 100%.
Yeah, I think with Cooper Flagg healthy, though, this is a team that's only lost 3 games all year.
It is true.
It could be a dangerous one for John Schreier in his first few years here at Duke, trying to follow the legend of Coach K. BYU, Wisconsin. This is one of the most exciting matches I feel could come down to in the tournament. This is a very solid middle of the pack Big 12 team versus a Wisconsin team that's so physical. I think the physicality of Wisconsin rules supreme just based on their previous tournament experience. They move on past the Cougars. St. Mary's, Alabama.
It's got to be Alabama.
It's got to be Bama. Just continue to impress.
Ooh, fairly
now,
chalky,
this is a very challenging and pretty chalky, right? Pretty, top seed heavy, but I think these matchups are super intriguing. Oregon and Duke. Now, Oregon, I'm from Oregon State, Corvallis area. So picking the Ducks is difficult to do. So I'm just going to go with Duke because I don't know if I can go against my beloved Beavers. Okay, there you go, Duke. They will move on to the regional final.
I like Alabama here.
I like Alabama as well. I think if they play their best basketball, they can win a national championship. Mark Sears is the guy who hit the buzzer beater against Auburn to get the win in the jungle in the Iron Bowl on the court. So I think it comes down to Duke and Alabama. This could be a huge regional final. I think this is where it gets difficult. I don't know if Duke is going to have a sensational talent like Cooper Flagg. This is, I think, the most talented Duke player we've seen since Zion Williamson, and I think they have to capitalize in it. Give me Duke.
He's
in
going
the Final
Duke.
Four.
We're going to break down the rest of the regions in the bracket here after a short break here on the Fox Local app. Hey, welcome back here on the Fox Local app and fox10phoenix.com. We are breaking down the brackets. It's that time of the year. This is March. That says March. Terrible handwriting. So we went through the top parts of the bracket already. Blake filled it out. We're having Blake kind of lead us through this here. He's our whack crack research team here. We got Michigan State and we got Duke so far. I kind of feel in Alabama. Blake and I had a little disagreement in the break, but the Alabama you know, the way you got to look at Alabama if you're filling out your brackets is you got to know the way Nate Oates' team likes to play is they're going to run, they're going to shoot a bunch, they're going to try to get out in transition. If they make their threes, you got a guy like Mark Sears, averages over 20 points a game, about 20 points per game. They're going to go far in the tournament. That's what happened last year when they made their run to the Final Four. But then what we saw in the Final Four last year is the flip side of Alabama was if they go a little cold and they have stretches where they can't score, they don't always have it defensively locked down as much as they should. They kind of have to outscore their way to a championship, which they could do. I think they may be able to, but we're going to go with Blake's pick of Duke here. So let's pick us up, Blake, here in the Midwest if we're filling out the brackets. The first one, I mean, we should probably, let's just, Houston's going at least to here, right?
Oh, yes. Houston is a team that could legitimately win the national championship. And I know we've said that for the past few years about this Cougars team, but this Kelvin Sampson team is one of the most connected, most difficult teams to play against in all of the country. We've got a first-hand seat to it to see it in the Big 12.
Regular season and tournament champions.
They have just dominated, have not wavered from who they are. This is a team who is one of the best teams in the nation on both sides of the ball, has Eldre Cryer, who is a walking bucket getter. Houston is going to go far in this thing. Gonzaga, Georgia. Now, this is intriguing because Georgia does have some big wins on the year. They beat St. John's, they beat Kentucky, and they also beat Florida, who a lot of people have picked to be their national champion.
SEC tournament champs.
We'll go on that on the other side of the bracket. But meanwhile, Gonzaga, it's been a little bit more of a down year for them, considering that they are an 8 seed, normally in the top 2 seeds or top 5 seeds, but they have top 10 in terms of experience. Players who have been in the NCAA tournament before, been a part of this roster. Give me the Zags, moving on. But I still got the Cougars beating Gonzaga. 2 historically successful programs, but Houston comes out on top.
Houston gets there.
Here is a fun matchup right here. Clemson, McNeese State. McNeese State has blown up all over the internet because of their student manager, Amir Khan. This guy has a beatbox walking around.
I've seen this guy. Yeah, this guy's great.
He's got a beatbox walking around with the locker room. The players have essentially embraced him as his own. So much so, this guy literally got an NIL deal as a student manager. I mean, get the bag when you can. Give me McNeese State with the upset. The Broncos are moving on. Purdue and High Point. Purdue coming off a national runner-up finish here in Phoenix to UConn. The Huskies going back-to-back, but no Zach Edey, no Wooden Player of the Year. That leaves some difficult holes for these Boilermakers to fill. They've fallen off a little bit this season. Meanwhile, High Point, similar to UCSD, second longest active win streak in the country. Got them moving on. Couple of double-digit upsets. Chaos here in the Midwest.
Carnage in the Midwest.
Carnage in the Midwest, but I got I chalked it through some other regions, but this one, I got some upsets.
You gotta have some anarchy.
Gotta have some madness in here. Okay, Texas and Xavier, this first 4 matchup is gonna go down tonight at 6 p.m. versus Illinois. Illinois has been up and down all season. Texas and Xavier, both really solid teams who I think could do some damage. You can't have madness without some first 4 teams moving on.
There you go.
Kentucky, Troy. Kentucky speaks for itself. Mark Pope has done a fabulous job in his first season. UCLA, Utah State. Now the Bruins, his most historically successful program in college basketball. Meanwhile, Utah State has gotten some big wins on the year, has been trending its way through the Mountain West, but I think the Bruins are due. I think they haven't been able to crack into a deep run of the dance since 2021 when they played Gonzaga, but I just got a feeling that they're going to move on in this tournament. Tennessee, Wofford. Tennessee was the runner-up in the SEC tournament. They'll be moving on, and I think that's where UCLA's hopes of getting back to prominence end. The SEC is
Tennessee.
UCLA, let's just put it this way. UCLA is the basketball of old. Tennessee and the SEC are the basketball of new. Upset matchup. I'm going to take McNeese State to the Sweet 16.
Let's do
Keep
it.
the beats on rolling with the student manager, Amir Khan. Kentucky, with new leadership under Mark Pope, change of the guard.
I'm just
Houston.
going to do this because that's...
That's where the Cinderella ends, right? You can only go so far.
The clock strikes midnight at some point.
This is going to be one of the most intriguing matchups. Tennessee has outmatched Kentucky in the SEC in conference play this season. Give me the Vols moving on to the conference final. Hopefully it sticks. There it goes. And we could have done Houston down the line because I have no doubt about these Cougars and playing for a national championship. I truly believe it.
All right, one region to go. The West.
On to the West.
Just for time-saving purposes, I'm going to just pick the ones that I'm assuming you're going to.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
John
Calipari not getting it done at a new school with Arkansas. St. John's is Rick Pitino. What he has done this year with St. John's, being able to take the Johnnies back to the top of the Big East for the first time in 25 years. I think this guy's back.
And they play defense. The defense, they say styles make fights and styles make games in March. So when you're going up against a Rick Pitino St. John's team, if you're a team like in Alabama or, even Kansas at times this year that wants to get out and score, this St. John's defense is not going to let you do that. So that's kind of the fun thing about March, too, is you see these matchups that are not traditional. And sometimes you get the normal, March Madness scores where they're in the 80s or so. And then you'll get a random when you go up against a team like St. John's where the score at halftime is like 20-16. And people are tuning in like, what's going on? It's like, well, you got the nerves of March and you got a hard-nosed lockdown defense like Rick Pitino runs.
And two of the most historically successful coaches in basketball going down here. Kansas, Bill Self, one of the winningest coaches in the game. Rick Pitino, likewise, but the Johnnies are going to keep on going to the Sweet 16.
I say because that's who I picked.
All right, back to the top of the bracket. The two-time defending national champion UConn Huskies trying to go for a three-peat. They're at least going to make it out of the first round.
Dan Hurley's not losing in the first round.
Now, that's where I think it halts for the Huskies. Florida arguably is picked widely across the board, across many brackets, as the national champion. We'll see how it goes in the Final Four, but I don't know if they'll make it there. I think they will, but they're not. UConn is not going to be able to three-peat, in my opinion. Memphis, Colorado State. Memphis played in the Maui Invitational, was a runner-up to Auburn. They're going to be moving on past Colorado State. Missouri and Drake back here.
This is a popular upset pick.
This is a popular upset. Missouri has had a good turnaround season this year. They went 0-18 in the SEC last year. They pulled off some big upsets this year in the SEC. Give me the Tigers moving on. I think Drake, while is a good popular upset pick, I got the Tigers continuing their dance here in 2025. Memphis and Grand Canyon, GCU and the Lopes. This is a solid matchup if they can make it past the first round in Maryland, which I believe they can.
We're picking with our hearts here, right? We're picking with our hearts.
I think the Lopes are headed to their first ever Sweet 16 in program history.
Let's do it.
Down to the Tigers and Texas Tech. We're going to stay Big 12 heavy with the Red Raiders. They have been a very good team. JT Toppin, this guy can drop like 40 a night any given night.
We watched him in Tempe just single-handedly just take over that game against the Sun
He's
Devils.
going to be a very good NBA player. We're down to the Sweet 16 here. St. John's continues on to the Elite Eight. Rick Pitino returns to prominence here in 2025. Let's see if we can get there to stick. Oh, almost latched, attached.
Okay, well, we'll go. Do this.
We're gonna.
First,
yep, that's where the Lopes' magical run ends. Oh, not quite hooking it. Oh, there we go. See if we can get the Johnnies.
Hey, this is live, people. Okay, this is what happens. Hey,
and there's the Johnnies. This is fascinating. I want your opinion on this too. I think Rick Pitino returns to the Final Four.
Give me Rick Pitino in the Final Four.
Everyone's picking Florida, and that's a popular pick, but I don't know if the quote-unquote sexy pick is always the winning pick. So we're down to the Final Four.
Very chalky, though.
Very chalky, but
all probable.
I think this is a year in college basketball where there's been upsets, but not as many as the year past. I think this is a great-looking Final Four.
Okay, so the brackets kind of end here for us in terms of the graphic we have. But who do you think? Who's your championship matchup in here? If this is how it shakes out, I kind of have a feeling where I would go. But
this is so amazing because this is just two fabulous coaches in the game who have been widely respected over the years. I think Tom Izzo returns to a national title game. Has not been there in over 2 decades. I like Michigan State. Just seeing what they had some trouble in the Big Ten tournament. They stumbled there, but I just think this is a year where the Spartans return to national prominence.
Matt Ishbia, Suns owner, will be very happy.
This is just exactly Matt Ishbia. I'm sure would be in attendance supporting the Spartans all the way. I just think this is a year for Tom Izzo, breaking all the records he has in terms of wins. Rick Pitino has done a lot of the same, just returning to national prominence, but I think this Spartan squad is just destined for something magical this year. Meanwhile, on the other side, I'm a Houston believer, man. I just got the Cougars no matter what. Oh, here we go to the national semifinals.
Our helpful producer, Mark Malrich, in my ear there.
I got the Cougars moving on to the national championship game. I've just been able to watch them firsthand. I got to go to Duke and watch them blow Arizona State at the building. That doesn't say much, though, because
I was going to say that ended up not, unfortunately, being a good litmus test for Duke.
It was an exhibition game, though, so it didn't go down on ASU's record, fortunately, for the Sun Devils. Good national title game. Houston, Michigan State. Kelvin Sampson, this is his year. Give me the Cougars.
You think Cougars? Okay.
I am a Houston believer. I picked them to win the national championship last year. They came up short. They've restocked. They've reloaded. They've come back better than ever. This is Kelvin Sampson and Tom Izzo, two widely respected coaches, but Houston is due for a championship run. They've gotten on the cusp to the Elite Eight, to the Final Four. This is where they finally get their chance at a championship.
If ASU can't be in the big dance this year, I'm okay with if a Big 12 team wins it, that's good for Arizona State. It's good for the conference to keep winning championships, even if it can't be the Sun Devils doing it.
Who do you got, man?
Honestly, my Final Four was fairly. I had Alabama coming out instead of Duke.
Can we switch it here?
But can we switch it? Maybe?
No, maybe not.
Oh,
hey, there we go.
Okay. So I had, and then, this is actually what I had. And then for the semifinals of this, I thought.
You got Bama in the championship.
I had Bama. I had basically the opposite.
Got St. John's.
Yeah, St. John's. And then I would. I think Rick Pitino.
Got Rick Pitino going all the way.
Yeah, why not? Let's have some fun with this.
He's won 3 national championships at 3 different schools. He's the only coach to ever do that. If he could do it at 4, that would be something probably never achieved before.
There you go. Well, hopefully, thank you guys everybody for tuning in and following along with us. Hopefully, we imparted some bracket knowledge. Like I said, you can do all of this. If you just pick by your favorite colors, you'll probably do better than we did.
Or dogs and cats.
Dogs and cats. Flip a coin. That's what March Madness is all about. That's how the bracket ends up ultimately breaking down. So we appreciate you guys tuning in, watching this. Good luck with your brackets. Enjoy March and the madness that it is. And we're just going to say goodbye. We'll sign off. Have a great one, everybody.
So long.